Hobbs introduces a 3-hour retrospective of his work, featuring archive material, some of which hasn't been heard on radio since its original broadcast, plus interviews with many of the names who worked with him. Now, if you're not acquainted with Chris Morris's work, expect provocative material and strong language. This is Raw Meat Radio.
Arise, Sir News.
News.
Mop, mop.
Hello, can we have Johnny Walker's body removed from Studio 3 as quickly as possible, please?
Sorry, Johnny Walker's
Body.
He could come in here now and say, I am going to ask you to punch yourself unconscious. And you will.
Oh my God!
You might temporarily think it was your idea to punch yourself in the face, and then mid-punching yourself in the face, you might think, wait a minute, I think this is what he wants me to do.
Why do you throw a tortoise across the room?
You told me to, Chris.
I didn't tell you. Obviously, I was joking.
What he inspired in a lot of people who went on to do comedy was this sense of don't settle for the traditional.
What are your feelings about the ephemeral dog?
I think it's pretty disgusting.
If the animal is going to attack, it increases in size about 5 or 6 times.
He's got all the gravitas and the surrealism of Peter Cook, but with this kind of self-belief that made people in World War I run in front of machine guns shouting, I love you, Captain Armstrong.
I have to ask you, why didn't you sack him?
Well, because he's one of the greatest talents working in British broadcasting.
You're listening to Raw Meat Radio, a Chris Morris retrospective. My name is Mary-Ann Hobbs. Tonight, 3 hours of highlights from some of the most ingenious radio shows ever made. Why Bother? On the Hour, Blue Jam, and rare archive from his earliest days that's never resurfaced on air until now. We'll also hear stories from people who've worked closely with Chris Morris, one of the most reclusive and defiant broadcasters of a generation, including Armando Iannucci, Peter Bainham, David Quantick, Paul Garner, and the man who suspended him from Radio 1, Matthew Bannister. So what makes Chris Morris so unique? Who better to ask than his longtime collaborator, Armando Iannucci?
What always struck me about Chris is, yes, he's very good at doing the imitation, the impression, the spoof, the parody. But on top of that, and what's more interesting, is his approach to comedy, which says, actually, this joke or this style of saying a joke or this making of something funny has to be unlike anything made before. And I love that, experimenting with where the funny is. The fact that you can drag an item out very slowly for 5 or 6 minutes and it becomes kind of hypnotic, and yet there's something about going through that pain barrier that then becomes funny.
Armando Iannucci began his career at Radio Scotland, and it wasn't until he moved down south that he had the idea to make On the Hour.
On my radio training course, I was asked to, which you all go on, I was lumped in with a group of people and taught how to make serious news programmes. And I thought, well, I don't want to do that. I want to make I might as well make something funny. So I used these reporters and news presenters and news producers on the course to help me make a spoof news programme. And on the basis of that, actually, Radio 4 said, hey, would you like to do a pilot? This sounds quite funny. Should we do a pilot? And so knowing that and hearing Chris, I thought, I've got to get in touch with this guy because he sounds absolutely the right person, since he's doing exactly that. And I met him in the foyer, the lobby of Radio 1. And we didn't quite know where to go. And he said he couldn't really park his car. So we got in his car, and it was a real battered old... It was an old Mercedes. I'm not terribly good with cars, but it was an old, kind of crappy... It looked like it was from the 70s. And there was nowhere to park. And we clicked instantly. I mean, it felt like 2 hours we drove around. I mean, we must have done about 100 circuits of Broadcasting House in order to avoid getting a ticket. And in the course of that conversation, I think we kind of more or less came up with what On the Hour should be.
And here it is.
This is On the Hour. Arise, Sir News.
On the Hour. Such is politics.
It's a painful business.
On the hour.
What you mustn't do in politics is listen to people.
It's a painful business. On Radio 4. Such is politics.
The green shoots of economic spring are appearing once again.
In an unkind way, I just mean to consistently, year after year, be at the top of the tree.
On the hour with Christopher Morris.
That's me. Now listen. Today's fronty prongs.
The headlines.
Rocket curtsied before blowing me up, claims General. Embarrassed dog found sniffing wreck of Titanic. And man with glass face too disgusting for trial, rules judge.
On the hour.
Plus, with the daily increase in concern for the environment now official, we gauge public reaction to the proposed reductions in the size of cars.
How many feet should a car be then?
I think a car should be about 3 or 4 feet.
And small people to drive them, obviously.
And small people to drive them, that's right.
You wouldn't mind taking a size reduction yourself to help, would you?
Absolutely, no. Might be much better for everyone.
Even if it did mean that you ended up speaking in quite a high voice.
I wouldn't mind that at all.
But first, the news. It's been confirmed that Ireland has burst. The cockatoo-shaped landmass blew open along the southwest coast, squirting millions of tons of noxious fluid into the Atlantic Ocean. The troubleshooter Red Adair, who was dropped into the area to tie up the ends, has not been seen for over 6 hours, and experts say the colossal pressure of the flow may well have prevented him from knotting 2 peninsulas effectively. It's understood that American naval forces are standing by to tow the stricken isle out to sea, where it will be bombed and sunk as quickly as possible.
On the hour.
Well, to examine the effect of this crisis, I'm joined now by Foreign Secretary Douglas Hurd in Brussels. Good morning.
Morning to you.
In Oslo, the Norwegian Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And John Prescott is in our Birmingham studio. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Good morning. And on a special line set up to Westminster, Cardinal Basil Hume.
Good morning.
Foreign Secretary Douglas Hurd is joining us from Leeds. Good morning.
I'm depressed.
And our telephone correspondent Nick Ross is in Norwich. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning.
Now, Paddy Ashdown in the studio with me at the moment. You know Nick, don't you?
Well, good afternoon, Nick, and nice to be with you again.
That's nice. And on the line from her home in Sussex, Barbara Castle. Good morning to you, Barbara.
Morning, Ian.
Gentlemen, thank you.
On the hour, towards a new Eden.
Now, there's no shortage of doubt that the world environment is in a shocking state. On the Hour has put together a nature awareness campaign called Know Your Globe. Here's Rosie May.
Green Desk.
Green News Update from me, Rosie May. How does it feel to be an eel? If you'd like to know, come to Ken Zetti's Eel Workshop in the River Axe, Somerset. Here you can go underwater and slither around in the silt to get a fair idea of how it might feel to be an eel.
Green Desk.
And as part of On the Hour's Nature Awareness campaign, we present the first in a series of factual enviropods.
That's the sound of an elephant. A beautiful noise from the heart of nature. Comes quite literally out of its trunk. Kinda gets you right there, doesn't it? But the seemingly peaceful world of this noble and benign creature is filled not only with threat, but a major death danger. You see, the elephant may be a tough cookie, but he is capable of being hurt. That's the sound of an elephant. And this is the sound of a gun. Put the two together, and Jumbo's a no-no. Sad thing is that the power behind the bullet is no more or less than man's greed. Because every day, thousands of elephants are quite literally put to death to be made into tarpaulins for lorries. We heard only last week the tragic tale of a lady elephant, let's call her Jackie, who'd been with a young bull called Brian for a couple of years when, literally, out of nowhere, came Duncan. Duncan was big, he was handsome. To say they hit it off immediately would be an understatement. Now, jealousy's a ruthless duchess, and it wasn't long before Brian had gone out of his mind and tipped off the local poachers. I guess he didn't know what he was doing, because in the resulting shower of death, Jackie, Duncan, and Brian bought big with bullets and fell over to die utterly on the ground. Clearly, nothing can compensate the world for this tragic loss. 3 deaths which, let's be quite blunt about it, you have brought about. You've done this simply by using something which was once transported somewhere in a lorry. That is the sound of an elephant. Record it. Play it to a lorry driver and say, "Thanks to you, mate, this is on the way out." And then watch with pride as he gets down and vows never again to hollow the guts out of an elephant and stick it on his lorry.
On the Hour. Never balks at issues from which other news programmes might well shrink.
I'm Alan Partridge. This is Sports Desk. Soccer news. Troubled Leeds United have sold Gordon Strachan for £2 million to retired schoolteacher Mr Philip Griffiths of Solihull in the West Midlands. Gordon will be expected to make beds, do gardening and spend any spare hours reading to his new owner by the light of a single candle. Mr Griffiths has no plans to allow Gordon to display the soccer skills that have made him famous.
News update.
A miracle has taken place in Birmingham. It seems the statue of a local saint has been vomiting real blood for over a year. Our reporter to Ventley Pastime has been to see just what's going on up there.
Victoria Square, Birmingham, and scene of unusual religious fervour. For exactly 1 year now, the ancient statue of local 17th century Saint Alderman Skinner, the bear word of Bailiwick, has been vomiting real blood. And the man who has to contend with Birmingham's international status as a shrine is City Mayor Malcolm Norman.
It's certainly revitalised a lot of local light industrial work. I don't know if you've heard about our blood bath, bubble bath. This is a locally made product. It's a plastic bottle, a replica of the statue, and the nozzle is the mouth, and red foaming gel comes out. You put it in the bath, very nice.
Is it made from the blood of the statue?
No, not actual blood, obviously. That would be unpleasant and possibly insanitary.
Legend has it that in 1643, Alderman Skinner once spat a pasty into the mouth of a dying old man who had no gums. Though the story doesn't make clear whether this act of kindness saved the gumless innocent, thousands have been inspired by the legend of the spouting mouth and now flock daily to Birmingham to gaze on the miraculous flow. Among them are seasoned travellers Aileen and Eileen Donnellan.
We've seen 14 visions. We've been for 14 different countries and seen 14 different visions.
And 12 of Madonna. What were the other 2 of?
Well, there was the one in Knock, wasn't there?
That's right. There was the Hovering Donkey.
Hovering Donkey of Knock.
And the Waving Daughter of Dante.
That's right, the Waving Daughter of Dante. That was in Perpignan, and that took us 28 days by foot with a suitcase full of stones.
For some, like local minister David Marston, these bizarre events hint at a contemporary truth.
People have been coming to church and saying to me, Father, well, they've been saying Dave, because I don't like the term father. They've been saying, Dave, what's all this about the statue, and what's all this about the blood? And I've not seen it myself, and I don't know whether it has or it hasn't happened. But I'm saying, if it is spewing blood, well, bloody good. And, if people can draw from this experience and say, bloody hell, God loves me as well, that's great. And then maybe the problems will diminish. They can come to the youth club and we can talk about it and go camping.
Some still doubt whether a miracle has actually taken place in Birmingham, despite the obvious blood. Psychopsychologist Erica Lawson is the author of Phenomena or Phonydom.
Just behind the statue of Alderman Skinner is the Civic Library. Now, that has recently been re-roofed. Now, the roofing that's been used is basically a copper roof. Now, copper, as we know, once it is oxidised, becomes a red colour. The refraction of light during rainstorms can cause the rain to look red. Rain that's being bounced off the alderman's nose, that rain is discoloured.
That doesn't seem to explain why at least 300 gallons a week of blood has been congealing and building up with a fountain below the statue.
It's not, whatever figure you just cited. On average, it's been around 16 centilitres a day. Now, we're talking about a major inner city area here. It's not unusual to have 16 centilitres of blood around. Not unusual.
You're not a Christian, are you, Dr. Erica?
I don't think that's relevant, actually. I don't want to discuss this because I don't think it's relevant. I'm a scientist.
Drive home safely.
To Vendley Pastime there with that fabulous report.